What was the sound that always filled the ears? The sound of the rain? The sound of a waterfall? Or was it radio static? In that case, I wanted to be the sound of blood flowing through the body. I wanted to be the sound of the blood circulating through my body, telling me that I'm still alive.
朝なのか。
The light entering through a crack in the curtain was faint, but it at least told him that dawn had broken. Kinzo, still in the same pose he had been when he awoke, still sitting in his chair and looking up at the ceiling, felt the blood slowly travel through his body. Judging by the clock, it was early morning, 6 on the dot. No matter how tired he was, no matter how deeply he slept, he woke up at exactly this time, as though he had measured it with an hourglass. He didn't think that something like this was worthy of boasting of, but he told himself that while he could still do something like this, he was still in robust health.
朝を迎えたということは、どうやら最初の生贄は逃れたということらしい。ルーレットの目が幸運だったのか、我が努力の賜物なのか。区別のつかぬところが何とももどかしいが、それは言うまい。
Kinzo was very slightly driven by a temptation to look at the other side of the study door, because he thought that maybe he might find the traces of a vain struggle to break the door, made by something trying to select him as one of the first 6 sacrifices.
人間とは安っぽい生き物だな。人事を尽くして天命を待ちながら幸運を得られた時にはそれが単なる幸運ではなく己の技量によるものだったとうぬぼれたくもなる。
Providence. So he wanted to check whether there was a wretched mark on the door. That is only human. Therefore, Kinzo did not check. He repressed the things that he wanted to do because he was human. By that, Kinzo could immerse himself in a feeling of sufficiency, as though he had become a being that surpassed humans. He became aware of human desire, and forbade it. Things that a human wanted to do, he resisted. This eccentric and rebellious sense had sure to give him a rare genius, which must have allowed him to succeed in his exploits, as he revived the Ushiromiya family in one generation.
さて、ベアトリーチェ、お前が取った6つの駒は何なのか。そして次なる手はどう来るのか。楽しませてもらうぞ。私の守りは完璧だ。前回のような無様はさらさぬぞ。
The servants woke early. They had to open the curtains, prepare breakfast, complete various other tasks to welcome the guests to a new day. Goda was the most enthusiastic. He had been told to concentrate his efforts in particular on his work as a chef for the duration of the family conference. And he had been especially exempted from several tasks that servants normally must do. It seemed that Goda, who was a show-off, had a particular feeling of supremacy about that. He left the preparations of the inside of the mansion to Genji and the rest, and worked on preparing breakfast in the kitchen. Genji split the work with Shana and Kano, and they carried out various tasks. Shannon had to do the dining hall and not. Last year, the family conference had continued into the small hours of the night. Yeah. Well then, I guess so. A new day has arrived. This will surely be quite something. Let's see. Goda, Genji, and Shannon are doing their morning routines. Let's see if there's anyone inside. It wouldn't have been odd for this year's conference to continue all the way into the next morning. So she had knocked out of consideration for the possibility that they were still having a discussion inside. But there was no response, so she opened the door and said good morning. The room was cold, and it seemed that the conference had ended a long time before. On top of the table, there was a tea set, from which they had probably been drinking, arranged in a way that would make it easy to clean them up. Cleaning away the tea was the servant's job, so if the family was too caring and cleaned it up themselves, the servants would lose face. Therefore, just doing this much for the servants truly was a pleasant act of kindness. As she approached the table to clean it away, she noticed that something like a memo had been left along with the cups. It had been placed together with a tea set, so naturally thinking it was a memo for the servant cleaning up, Shannon took it. Written on it was not a request, nor thanks for preparing the tea, but just a single word. Shannon looked at it blankly, and read it out loud. Chapel. A small sound kept repeating over and over. It was a sound that would ordinarily have been trivial and insignificant. I hope I stop hearing it soon, and then I can return to my doze, someone thought vaguely. But no matter how much time passed, the sound did not end. It repeated over and over. Ah, shut up. Who is that? Banging on the door constantly. As soon as she realized this, she woke up. Someone was knocking. Then, she noticed that there wasn't just a knock, but a voice too.
Rosa-sama. Rosa-sama. Ohayou gozaimasu.
待って。今行きます。
It had been Genji's voice. Looking at the clock, it was still before 7. It was clearly too early to wake the guests. Did something happen that was bad enough to cause this? She felt her sleepiness increasingly fade thanks to this ominous premonition. Because Genji had been a familiar servant to Rosa since her childhood days, she opened the door a crack and answered, even though she was slightly defenseless in her pajamas.
Ohayou gozaimasu. 早朝から申し訳ございません。
何かあったの？
はい、実は礼拝堂に。
Genji spoke into Rosa's ear and told her something in a small voice. It seemed that Rosa couldn't understand what she was being told after only hearing it once. And after repeating the words back to him several times, she finally realized that apparently something strange had happened. Rosa closed her door for a second, and after changing her clothes, she immediately accompanied Genji and they headed to the mansion. The chapel requires some explanation. He wasn't in the mansion, but in the grove behind the mansion, which could be reached after a short walk. It had been built at the same time that the mansion had been constructed on Okenjima, so while its outside walls had been repaired many times, making it look new from the outside, it was a very old building. Rosa and Genji dashed through the rain together. Just like the previous night, the rain was falling in earnest. Eventually, they began to see the chapel beyond the sparse grove. With how big this chapel is and how threatening it looks under this rain, It almost gives a strong aura of some sort. An aura that I certainly do not feel comfortable with. If all she knew of it was its appearance from the outside, it might have felt like a place of dazzling beauty, where a pair of young lovers might want to hold a ceremony. However, it seemed that in Kizo's eyes, this was a very sacred place, and Oza and her siblings had been harshly told not to approach it unnecessarily. So even at this age, and no matter what the reason for it, she felt some guilt in approaching the chapel, and was gripped by the fear that this would surely make her father so angry he would slap her across the face. The servants' silhouettes could be seen in front of the entrance to the chapel. Gora, Shannon, and Kana, which meant that all the servants on the morning shift had gathered. A short while ago, Rosa had been told the nature of the situation verbally by Genji. However, without laying eyes on it directly, she really hadn't been able to understand. Probably all the servants gathered there were the same. Without seeing it with their own eyes, they couldn't understand what was going on. Because on the door that was the entrance to the chapel, shone very large, with a creepy sticky paint-like substance that made one think of blood, was something like a creepy magic circle. And the same magic circle.
何よこれ。いつ書かれたの？
The servants looked at each other. Goda was the first to open his mouth.
申し訳ございません。普段はここへは立ち入りませんもので、いつ書かれたのかはわかりません。
じゃあ最初に見つけたのは誰？はい、私です。食堂へお茶の道具の片付けに行きましたら、礼拝堂と書かれたメモがあったもので。
Shannon held out the memo with a shaking head.
誰の字？兄さんや姉さんの字ではないわね。それであなたはここへ来てこれを見つけたのね。はい。
ローザ様、これを。
何？ハッピーハロウィン。フォー。
Kana was pointing out a single line of English written below the creepy magic circle. Until it had been pointed out to her, she had thought it was just another part of the magic circle, and hadn't noticed it. Written there in English were the words, "Happy Halloween for Maria." Happy Halloween for Maria. Happy Halloween for Maria. A wish for an enjoyable Halloween for Maria. A creepy magic circle for Maria. Happy Halloween. The only person who said the words Happy Halloween to Maria yesterday, the symbols matched. The Golden Witch, Beatrice.
マリアは？あの子、いとこたちと一緒に寝てるはずよね。確認した？
申し訳ございません。マリア様のお名前が書かれていたことには今気づきましたもの。まだ確認しておりません。至急。
何やってんのよ。私はマリアの様子を見てきます。それからクラウス兄さんたちにも知らせて、以後の対応の指示を受けて。
After saying that much, Rosa finally noticed that something was out of place. Her own rank within this family conference was the lowest of the four siblings. In an abnormal situation like this, why had she been the only one called when the other siblings hadn't? Even if Maria's name had popped up.
まさか。
はい。 旦那様にご連絡申し上げようとしたのですが、お姿が見当たらず。
奥様もお部屋におられません。シーツの様子からすると、昨夜はベッドに戻られていないのかもしれません。
I also felt something creepy crawling slowly up her back.
礼拝堂の中は確認した。い
え、まだです。確認しようとはしたのですが。
実は礼拝堂の鍵は特別でマスターキーに対応しておりません。
Not even the mastery key.
一本だけある鍵でしか開けられないのですが、その鍵がキーボックスから紛失しているのです。
Darn. I wonder, is this key's location only known by servants as well? She didn't want to get any closer to the door with the creepy magic circle, if she could help it. Rosa readied herself and approached, and tried pushing and pulling the knob. All she felt was the resistance of the sturdy lock.
入れる窓などがないか探してはみたのですが、もし中を確認するのでしたら窓を破らなければならないかと思います。
Sounds good to me.
いかがいたしましょう。
そんな許可私に出せるわけがないわ。
Oh.
お父様の大切な礼拝堂なのよ。そんなことできないわよ。
Then the events of the previous day swirled around in the back of Rosa's mind. And that's right. When I met that witch in the rose garden, didn't she hand Maria an envelope? Yes, I'm positive she did. When Maria had tried to open it, that witch had told her not to do that yet. And then she had definitely said, the time will come soon to open it. Rosa became convinced. There could be no doubt. That letter which had been penned to Maria. After dashing back to the guest house, Rosa approached the cousin's room while hiding her footsteps. Softly opened the door and peered inside. From the inside, she could hear the healthy snores of young people. The 4 children were all there. Maria was there, sleeping soundly. Okay, that's good. They're still alive. After heaving a sigh of relief, she entered the room with quiet footsteps. She was after Maria's handbag, which was resting on the sofa. Maria always liked walking around with her treasures. She was probably imitating how her mother always carried her makeup with her. Of course, she was just copying them, so on the inside it was full of junk. In Maria's case, it was full of small, creepy occult-like items, and a notebook with things like that written on it. Rosa hadn't once been happy to see her daughter walking around with those kinds of ungirlish things. However, after she had tried to force Maria to stop, they had gotten into a big fight, and she had decided to let it be. A western envelope with the crest of the gold eagle. When she took it out, she could tell that there was a heavy, cylindrical object inside. She could tell by its feel and its weight. There was no doubt. This was a key. After turning around and checking that Maria was still sound asleep, Rosa tore open the envelope and tipped out the contents into her palm. It was a key with an old and intricate design. I see. Wait a minute. If this key was inside the envelope the whole time, then that would mean that the door to the chapel was always closed? Unless there is a second key. Huh. I mean, it's not like that magic circle has the power to lock the door. On the contrary, from what I know, it is meant for something to break from its bonds, to gain freedom. In order for that to happen, to be effective, 6 chosen sacrifices are needed. So, yeah, whatever the case is, without this key, how can anyone enter the chapel if the door was always closed? I wonder. Rosa grasped the key and dashed out. Oh shit, she already went out. Wait, hold on! It seemed that Battler noticed those sounds, but after grumbling and turning over in his sleep, he started snoring again. Mackerel.
源氏さん、この鍵、ひょっとして礼拝堂の鍵ということは。
これをどこで。はい、これが礼拝堂の鍵です。
Rosa approached the creepy magic circle once again and put the key in a keyhole. It was a strong resistance. After he resisted for a short while, it stopped that resistance with a clunk. Then, squeaking with a noise that hurt one's ears, it slowly began to open. Her voice reverberated throughout the master room. Of course, there was no answer. The chapel had a high ceiling, and the air was cold. And even on this rainy, unsettling day, for some reason, it felt sacred. The servants timidly followed after Rosa.
Rosa-sama, あれを。
Kana noticed immediately and pointed. Over there was the altar. In the place where normally a pastor could preach of God's love, there was a table that shouldn't have been there. At first, it looked like a dining table. And there actually were gorgeous plates and utensils set on the table, enough to make you think it was a child's birthday party or something. Boy, my AI is surely going to be happy once she sees this. Upon closer inspection, the surrounding area had been decorated with pumpkins and black and orange ribbons. Or probably Halloween decorations. And there were people seated at the table. 3 people on each side facing each other, seated in chairs. They could be recognized at a glance. Kraus and his wife, Eva and her husband, and Rudolf and his wife. But if you were asked if these were definitely them, you still have to go even closer to check. Because they seemed almost like dolls. Rosa and the rest had opened the door, entered all at once with the sound of many footsteps, and called out, asking if anyone was there. And yet, there had been no reaction. Even assuming they had chosen to ignore them, normally you'd expect there to be some kind of reaction. And there hadn't even been that. So at first, it felt like someone had set down some dolls that looked a lot like them. By now, it wasn't just Rosa. Shannon and Kano, and even Goda. They were all fighting frantically against the rising creepy emotion, tightly grasping their hearts.
兄さん、Aさん。
As she climbed up to the altar, she called out again. But still, the others gave no reaction. Yes, by now Rosa had accepted it. They were not dolls. She had accepted they were those very people.
これは
They approached close enough to be able to see clearly what was on the table. Just like their first impression, it looked like a lovely banquet. reminiscent of a child's birthday party. Plates piled up with sweets, glasses with lovely drinks, several ornaments in the shape of pumpkins. They were all decorated in a Halloween style. And while it may have been an irrelevant thought at a time like this, she thought that this would surely make Maria happy if she could see it. They were sitting in front of the table, and it looked like they were sleeping. It is an eerie scene, as though a small, fun-looking Halloween party had been stopped in time.
兄さんたち寝てるの？
When she approached even closer to them, she realized that candies were scattered all over the floor. There were candies in very fancy wrapping, cookies, fizzly demon sweets, chocolates. And they were all distributed across the carpet, which was covered with blackberry and cranberry jam. Well, that sure ain't cranberry jam. On close inspection. Those under arrest finally realized what the situation was. It was a Halloween party. A banquet for those not of this world. Kraus, Nazi, Eva, Hideyoshi, Rudolph and Kirie, 6 people in all, were seated in chairs, dead as though they were sleeping. How could you tell that they were dead and not simply sleeping? God damn it. All of Battler and Jessica and George's parents are dead. All 6. That was because they were, from their chests to their stomachs, vertically sliced up.
なんて室井
And the 6 of them were seated at a Halloween party, all of them killed, with their stomachs sliced open. Was the jam that covered the floor something that they couldn't finish eating, which had overflowed out of their stomachs? No. And the contents of their stomachs had been splattered all across the floor. And that wasn't all. From their stomachs, almost as though they had spilled out sweets. Candies and cookies, fizzy lemon sweets and chocolates had spilled out, stained with blood, and had scattered across the floor. Jesus Christ. This is bloody sick. Again, such cruelty. What could have happened to cause this? It was almost as though the insides of their stomachs had been stuffed full with sweets. And when their stomachs had been cut, it had all flowed out. I also remember the gross out meal. A turkey that had been served at her own birthday when she was a young girl. When she had put a knife in, from the inside, her very favorite. But because no one had told her about it at all. Bright red, ketchup omelette rice had poured out like blood-stained maggots. Dripping, slimy, pulpy, sticky. Trauma of her youth was revived. And Rosa felt a monster raging inside her stomach as the acid started to rise up. Unable to hold back, she threw up on the floor. Her empty stomach couldn't throw up anything but stomach acid. This scene in front of her was no longer a fun Halloween party by any means. The 3 couples had been placed there, with their stomachs vertically wrenched open with a Lots and lots of sweets had been stuffed in there. Pulpy. Blood and guts and sweets were overflowing on the floor. Blood-stained, sticky, sloppy, pulpy. Sweet candy stuck to each finger. Gummy. They had stained with their entrails. Sloppy, pulpy. What was that I stepped on just now? That didn't feel like candy or cookie or fizzy lemon sweet or chocolate. So scared I can't even look at the bottom of my foot to see what I stepped on. What a gruesome Halloween party. From far away, it looked really beautiful, fantastical, and fun. And when you see it up close, it's really terrible, disgusting. And it's still somehow beautiful. Rosa's wild thoughts tried as best they could to escape her throat with a loud voice that was neither a scream nor a roar. If a word tied to reality like police hadn't come out of Gora's mouth, Elza's and the rest would probably still have been unable to escape this nightmarish party. But that wasn't because they thought that the police might be able to do something. Even if they didn't say police out loud. It felt like another seat would be set up at this demon's party and given to them. It felt like their own stomachs were getting uncomfortably filled from the inside. Rumbling, churning. It was surely because candy was starting to overflow from their stomachs. But Rosa was again tortured by a desire to vomit, and threw up her stomach acid on the floor. And then she searched to see whether there was any candy mixed in. Oh God, you poor thing. Alright, you know what? I think it is time everyone went outside. Any longer and you're all gonna go insane from looking at it too much. Rosa coughed violently again, and finally spat up the stomach acid that burned her throat onto the floor. She realized that by now, her whole body had become covered in filthy sweat.
Genji-sanとシャナンちゃんがお父様に連絡して指示を仰いでちょうだい。郷田さんはカノン君と一緒に行って警察に電話を。あと、南條先生に来てもらう。
Have Nanja come here and what? It's way too late for medical care. The servants accepted their orders and dashed outside. After watching them leave, Rosa once again fixedly cast her eyes upon her siblings, who had been through life's joys and sorrows with them and their partners. Even though there could be nothing more tragic, for some reason, their fantastical deaths tempted them to describe them as beautiful.
Iねえな。どこに行っちまったんだろうな。
使用人室も厨房も空っぽだぜ。一体どうしちまったってんだ。
弱ったね。バトラ君、本当にローザおばさんだったのかい？
まあ俺も寝ぼけてたから自信はねえんだが、明け方にローザおばさんが入ってきてマリアの手提げカバンを漁ってるような気がしたんだよ。俺はてっきりマリアの手提げに歯磨きのチューブでも入ってるんじゃないかなんて思って寝ぼけてて。
なんで歯磨きのチューブがマリアの手提げに入ってるんだよ。寝ぼけて夢でも見たに決まってんぜ。
Batter vaguely remembered Rosa entering the cousin's room, and Maria, who had woken up first, had started rampaging around, saying that someone had opened the envelope that she had been keeping safe. And so they had started wondering whether Rosa might have come and opened it.
黄金の魔女様の封筒か。中に何が入ってたんだろ
う。わからないね。でもあの封筒はおじい様が新書に使う後宮家の家紋の入ったものだった。親族会議と無関係なものが入っていたとは考えがたいね。
She hadn't let anyone touch it, but yesterday Maria had bragged a lot about the envelope, the better, and the rest, so they remembered it well.
"ジョージの兄貴の言う通りなら相当重要なものらしいが、しかしそんな大事なものをどうして魔女様はマリアに渡したんだろうな。さっぱりだぜ。
The refreshing morning atmosphere had been completely wiped out by the occasional sounds of thunder. It was only natural. Since the time they had woken up, they hadn't met anyone other than themselves. It felt like the mansion had become an empty husk, leaving only them behind.
おーい、誰かいないか？返事してくれよ。
After Jessica called out into the hallway, an answer finally came back. It was from the entrance hall.
聞こえますとも。何かありましたか？
南條先生だ。よかった。この島から僕たち以外が消えてしまったわけではないようだよ。
南條先生、おはようございます。すみませんが、うちの親たちとかどこに行ったか知りませんか？
はて、私も今起きてこちらに来たばかりですからな。わかりかねますが、さて。
It was only natural. Nanjo was a guest like the rest of them. He had just now come to pass the time in the parlor until breakfast. マリア buried her face in Nanjo's well-built stomach, sobbing and crying. Nanjo could do nothing but be bewildered at what was going on so early in the morning.
誰かかけてくるぜ。ジェシカ、誰か来るぞ。
From down the hall, they could sense people running hurriedly. When they looked, they saw that it was Goda and Kana. Running inside the mansion should have been immodest for a servant. And yet, Valor and the rest didn't even think to question that now. Maria's sobbing had become so unimaginable, they wanted to ask someone, anyone, where Rosa was. But the two servants ignored Jessica, and she waved her hand. Goda flew into the servant room, and Kano, noticing that Nanjo was here, bowed and approached him at a quick pace, and whispered something into his ear.
何ですって？ローザさんが。
はい、ご案内いたしますので、どうかご同行お願いいたします。
Yeah. And I hope that you have the stomach for what you're about to see, Nanjo.
わかりました。
こちらへ。
Without saying anything more than that, Kanon finally noticed Jessica and bowed her. but he wasn't calm. He dashed back down the corridor which he had come, followed by Nanjo. And by looking at how hurried they were, Valor and the rest realized that something bad already had happened. They saw God out through the door to the sermon room, which had been flung open. He had the telephone receiver in hand and was violently pressing the hook. From that, they realized that he was trying to call a hospital, or the police, or in any event, he was trying to call someone because a serious emergency occurred.
行ってみようぜ。
Huh? An invitation to the Golden Land. Wait a minute. Beatrice did say that before, didn't she? Does that mean that key is the invitation? I wonder. They didn't know what. Something was happening. Valor and the rest chased after Kano and Nanjo. And then we realized. Kanan-kun had called Dr. Nanjo, but he had called us. So we should never have followed. I wonder if Alice didn't regret her excess curiosity when she chased after the rabbit holding a clock.
命を奪うならそれで十分事足りただろうがよ。なんだよこりゃ。わざわざ殺した後に椅子に座らせて腹裂いて歌詞をわざわざ中に詰め込んだってのかよ。なんだってなんだってそんな悪趣味なことをしやがるんだよ。チキショウやってくれやがるぜ。最高だよ最高だよ。
皆さんは外へ出られた方がいい。こんな姿を皆さんに見せたいなどと彼らが思うわけがありません。
Nanjo told the children to go outside, but no one lent him an ear.
ローザさん、皆さんに言ってください。こんなもの見続けてはどこになる。
Osaka credit her own carelessness. She should have been able to anticipate that the children would eventually come here. She should have quickly locked in instead of standing around. So now the children had come. They had seen it. Surely, in this very moment, they were having a sight burn into their eyes, which was far more grotesque than the gross-out food Rosa had seen in her youth. Oh, she hugged Maria, seemed to have forgotten her emotions, as she stared dumbfounded at the horrible scene. But Rosa shed copious tears for them and their parents. The four groaning and crying voices, their sadness, continued to echo in a place which should have known God's love.
クソ野郎がまたかよ。またこんな殺人を。しかも今度もやたらと凝った最高にふざけた殺し方をしやがって。
わらわはそんな嘆きより感謝の言葉が聞きたかったぞ。
Yeah? In what world?
感謝と言ったがこのクソババ。 てめえ、耳がいかれてやがるってんなら俺が両の耳を引き裂いてよく聞こえるようにしてやるぜ。なんで俺がこの最高にいかれた殺し方にありがとうございますベアトリーチェ様なんて言わなければならねえんだ。ぶっ殺してやる。
前回のゲーム
で
お前は自分の親の死に顔が見られないと嘆いたな。だから残したぞ。しっかり残した。
Well, how grateful we are for this act, Beatrice. How freaking grateful.
よく拝んでおけ。間違いなく父親たちが殺されたことを。
そうかよ。そいつはサービス満点だぜ。気に入った。俺はてめえの息の根を止めたら顔面耕してやろうと誓ってたが、そいつは取り消してやるぜ。てめえの腹渡を引きずり出してやる。
感情に任せて思考を止めるな。すでにわらわのゲームは始まっておるのだぞ。
Alright, fine. You are indeed right. The killings have started again. The first twilight is finished yet again. But we will figure things out.
わらわは今回は綺麗に死体を残すことに決めた。なぜだかわかるか？前回のゲームでそなたがわらわの存在を否定するとき、こう考えて否定したであろう。それは顔面が潰され遺体の身元が確認できない。だから身代わりの死体を用意してアリバイを作った可能性が否定できない。その可能性が排除できない限り人間犯人説は維持できる。
なんだと
Well, you know what? Fine. If that is your reasoning, then for now I will accept it. For this game, that is. Don't you think that just because we're focusing on this game, that we're gonna totally forget our theories for the previous game? Even if the circumstances are different.
さあバトラー、南條に検視を任せてよいのか？ミステリーの古典では検視の医者がグルというのが伝統なのだろう。なら南條に検視を任せるな。そなたが自らするがよい。間違いなく6人の死体が当人で死んだふりなどでなく本当に死んでいることを十分に確認するがいい。お前の父親が母親が腹を裂かれて臓物を引きずり出されて殺されていることを腹に手を入れてその手触りで確認するがいい。
泣かねえ。チキショー、チキショー。
Better suddenly yelled. His tears were still dripping down, but as though scolding himself for being gory, he slapped his face hard several times with both hands. Even so, the tears still wouldn't stop. However, he felt a hot blaze ignite in both his eyes.
これだけの上等を決めやがった野郎に借りはがっちり返させていただくぜ。なら泣く時じゃねえ。自分のすべきことを考えろ。
Indeed. Let's make it count. We are gonna work even harder, so snap out of it, Bever, and let's get to it. We have less than 18 hours to uncover as many mysteries as we can.
ああ、ダメだぜ、全然ダメだ。涙を流す暇があったら考えろ。涙腺なんかひるませる時じゃんねえ。